So I gotta do things a bit differently this time. A constant problem that I'm having on YouTube is that YouTube likes to get rid of my videos for having too much copyright in it, which is bull. Most of my videos I go through and I run down the plot from start to finish with the movie, and I pick out whatever I don't like, you know what I mean? Point out all the funny moments. But this time I'm not gonna do that. This time, I'm just gonna look at the entire movie as a whole in sections. I'm gonna talk about the plot, I'm gonna talk about the characters, and I'll talk about all the other stuff related to film, like photography and shit. I will keep my King of the Hill, and I will keep my rating system. So yeah, if you guys do like this new format, I'm trying this for the first time, so if you guys do like this new format, please give a like, give a subscribe. Let me know what you think of this. If you prefer the old format for the next movie review, I will go back to the old format. Without further ado, guys, I know it's been a very long time, but let's get started.
Woo, that's heavy. I better use my strong hand.
Perhaps the worst part of this entire movie. Look, I like the scary movies. I like all the scary movies, but they're not that good. If I have to go into a movie thinking this is gonna be a spoof movie, don't take it seriously, it means that I can't take apart your plot the way I want to. That's not necessarily a bad thing when it comes to a comedy, but even some comedies have good plots. So if you're telling me to actively ignore it, it means that it's most likely not a good plot. The plot itself is kind of basic, stereotypical horror movie stuff, and of course it's ripping off other movies. A really good example of something like this, the very beginning of the movie rips off Exorcist for about 10 minutes. And there are some funny jokes in this first part, like the opening piano playing.
God, I told y'all before, y'all don't with me.
The priest actively leaving the scene because he doesn't want to be involved. And then like these random jokes that are never gonna be explained. But this opening scene really demonstrates my main problem with this movie, outside of just the plot being ridiculous. This movie's humor is a roller coaster, right? It's got some like really funny jokes, but it's got some terrible bottom of the barrel. I'm pretty sure she like uses every single bodily function in the first 5 minutes of the movie. Not even Shrek could do that. I think the worst one is at near the end where he's in the freezer. This movie also does have a lot of recognizable actors in it. Obviously, you have the main character who voices Sam Sparks in Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. She's known for these movies. You got Marlon Wayans, who carries this movie on his back. You got this weird Aryan-looking guy who looks like Justin Timberlake and Neil Patrick Harris. You got this professor in a wheelchair who's the main villain of Alvin and the Chipmunks. And then, of course, one of the biggest stars in there, Tim Curry, aka It the Clown. And then you got like this really terrible character. The caretaker is probably the worst character in this movie. He's just so weird. He sticks his fingers in people's food, has that really messed up hand, and most of the time his jokes are just terrible. He puts on a voice the whole movie and it's not very funny. Although I will say his back and forth with the professor in the wheelchair is some of the best jokes in the movie. Constant arm and leg puns, taking jabs at each other. Plot's kind of how you expect it. Good guys win. Yay, I guess. On to the characters. So I think this movie's biggest strength, it's not the plot, obviously. I think this movie's biggest strength is its characters, because we're so many years off from this movie and people are still talking about these characters. More specifically, the best character in this movie is Marlon Wayans' character. He's your stereotypical pothead who's got no brain at all and can barely walk, but he's got some of the greatest moments in this entire movie. There's an entire scene dedicated to him getting rolled up into a joint and smoked by a tree. He gets his brain taking out, and it is the most dumb reveal I've ever seen, but it's super funny. And then of course you got Sydney. She's there. She's kind of the character that's written to just stumble into everything that happens. Sydney needs to fight a cat. Sure, she's in the room with the cat, and there's a cat in the room now. Sydney needs to fight off the caretaker? Sure, let's make her one of the Charlie's Angels. And then there's her best friend, Brenda. Brenda is pretty funny. She's also the smartest character in this whole movie, because she basically acts as the audience. Then you got the stereotypical hot chick who, she's kind of useless the whole movie. She has one little scene with the professor in the wheelchair, which ends up with him sucking his own for some reason. This movie's so dumb. She really doesn't add much to this entire movie. She's just there as an extra. You got Buddy. They kind of just write him as this guy who isn't very observant of social cues. That's really about it he does. When you first watch it, you think, oh, Tim Curry is going to be the main villain. No, he's pretty useless too. He invites them there, he's there for dinner for a little bit, and then poof, he's dead. David Cross's character is probably the second best, just because you think he's going to be a villain, but he has really good interactions with everybody around him. My favorite scene in this entire movie is a wheelchair fight that he has with a ghost. And then you have this friend who's just kind of there. She has sex with a ghost and then tries to marry the ghost, but that's all she did the whole movie. And I've already gone over the caretaker. The caretaker is the worst. I can only think about this parrot who just talks everybody the entire movie.
Hey there, little guy. How you doing?
Off, Four Eyes.
I ought to kick your ass.
Hello, Birdie. Polly want a cracker?
Polly wants your mama's sweet ass.
Before I go any farther with this review, I completely glossed over this character and this moment in the movie. I completely forgot to mention Ray. He's Brenda's boyfriend, and he's kind of gay. That's his main character trait. You don't really think that that's gonna come in handy in this movie, but somehow the writers make that an important thing. So you remember how I said one of the girls has sex with a ghost? Well, it didn't really start off willingly. And the same thing almost happens to Ray, only things go a bit different.
Uncle Ray Ray's got a game.
Hey, get your finger out of there.
Tickle, 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 tickle. You wanna play with Uncle Ray?
So most of the time during these reviews, I tend to be a little bit negative towards the movie entirely, and it might give the opinion that I don't like watching this movie at all. I do actually enjoy watching this movie. I find it pretty funny, at least most of the time. The things that I really like about this movie the most is that it really doesn't give a shit. And I respect that, but I have my own little grievance about that in a second. I really like the characters in this movie. I think they're all very memorable for specific reasons. I like random bits of humor that you wouldn't think about, like people constantly getting run over by cars, the radio yelling at someone to shut the hell up when they're singing,
Hey! Will you shut the up and let me sing?
random Nike basketball commercials. Alright, I got all my positive stuff out of the way. Now let's get to the negative. This movie's plot can eat a bag of so that one's more on my personal taste. What else is in my personal taste is the gross out humor. When it goes for gross out humor, it goes. There's a line, it will take that line underneath a bed and skull it. Earlier in the review, I said they use basically every bodily function. I'm not kidding. Give me one example of a bodily function that they didn't use in this movie. Go ahead, I'll wait. I'm pretty sure 3 of them are used in the beginning. And that is what I don't like about this movie. So Scary Movie 2 is probably going to be remembered as a movie that your buddies will get together and watch while they're high because Family Guy wasn't an option at that time. But that's pretty much what this movie is. If you don't take it seriously, you'll have a blast with it. If you do want to sit down and watch this movie for the plot, don't. But this is not a bad movie. I just think that this movie is extremely overrated. It's really not that good of a movie. I can see where people are coming from with this because they're mainly just talking about the jokes that come out of it. But they forget that there's a lot of terrible jokes in this movie that just aren't funny. So now we get on to King of the Hill. For those of you that don't know what my King of the Hill is where I will rank all the movie reviews that I've covered previously, and I pin the top movie against whatever movie I'm covering right now. My current King of the Hill is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. As you probably guessed by how I've acted this entire review, it's not going to beat Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I think they're both funny in different ways, but it really just depends on your humor for that. But literally, Scott Pilgrim wipes this movie out with every other category, plot included. As for my rating of this movie, I'd probably give it about a 5. I do like this movie, no matter how much it sounds like I don't. It's definitely better than the other 3 movies that come after this. Seriously, the 5th one sucks. So if you are going to watch Scary Movie 2, get a few buddies together, and I think that's going to be the end of this movie review, guys. Please let me know what you thought of this. If you haven't already and you've stayed to the end of the video, please subscribe. If you want to see more different stuff that we have, you can go to my Instagram. That's where I also do the voting for the movies. We also have a Twitch too, so go check that out as well. And we got a new Discord server. It's definitely a good way to reach out, and you could also send suggestions in there. We might do voting in there as well if we get a bigger audience. This movie review was suggested by my good friend Dom. Dom, you. So my main takeaway from this is if you think a movie is really good and someone challenges you that it's not, try rewatching that same movie because the movie that you might be watching may not be as good as you think it is.